Welcome back to Breakfast Television. Well, caregiving for aging relatives is becoming more common, but not a lot of families understand the real costs involved, and our next guest is going to help us with just that. I'm joined by Stephanie Erickson, family caregiving expert and social worker. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you so much.
It's great to have you here. So approximately how many Canadians are considered caregivers right now?
About 8 million, which is a pretty large percentage of our population, over a quarter of the population. Lots of people.
So who is doing the caregiving for the most part?
There are more women than men, which is probably the assumption most people make. But
Right.
I will tell you, more and more, a lot of men are full-time caregivers, part-time caregivers, sharing the load with their sisters, brothers, etc. So men are involved increasingly, yeah.
What is considered caregiving? Because I think many of us think, caregiving, oh, mom or dad has moved in, or another relative, an aunt or an uncle has moved in, and now they're my dependent. But it's more than that, isn't it?
It is, and I don't even necessarily think that people jump to they're living with me. I think people imagine if I'm a caregiver, that means I'm helping someone move, I'm helping them bathe, I'm helping them change their clothes. I think people tend to associate it with physical care,
Right.
But it's really not. It can be things from helping to organize bills, sitting with your parent at a financial meeting with their advisor just to help give them a little bit of guidance, all the way to picking up groceries, bringing some meals, and it increases over time. So what you thought were just, oh, I'm helping my mom, all of a sudden you're like, oh no, wait, I have to make the doctor's appointment. Now I have to take off work and go to the appointment. So it can increase over time.
The other consideration, Stephanie, is the financial costs, and not a lot of us necessarily think about it until it's probably too late. What are some of the financial costs involved?
I think, just to back up for a second, Derek,
Sure.
I think a lot of us don't think about it because we assume the system will provide for everything.
Right.
Resources are getting tighter, so it will fall on us a lot more financially than I think we had anticipated.
Or we even think our parents have enough resources to look after themselves as well. We were talking about that during the break.
Yeah, and a lot of us assume that if the resources are there, therefore we'll be able to do everything. You might have resources, but do you actually know how your parent wants you to spend those resources?
Right.
So that's another issue. But in terms of costs, we're looking at caregivers' out-of-pocket expenses can run up to, $6,000 a year. We don't expect to do that. And then there's all the finances that we lose as caregivers because we're not able to go to work, we're taking vacation time or a leave of absence, those kinds of things. Now our own retirement is jeopardized because of the lost time.
I think another issue as well that we don't necessarily consider is the psychological, the emotional costs when it comes to watching your parents age. And I know our very own Catherine Verdon Diamond here is going through that right now with her father, who needs a lot of care. How does it affect us emotionally, and how do we plan for it emotionally?
I don't know that you can plan emotionally. I mean, I can, as a family caregiving expert, whatever that means, say, oh, I know what to do. Yet
Right.
when my mom needs care, I can't tell you that I'm actually going to be able to manage it well emotionally.
Right.
So that I don't know that we can prepare for. But I think what helps us emotionally is knowing what our parents want. If we have preventative discussions, proactive discussions, and this is the point I was making before we went on camera
Yes.
about your dad, is understanding what your mom or your dad wants. So when it does come time to make decisions for them, at least you're feeling more confident and you're not guessing. And I think that helps to minimize some of that emotional stress.
Well, let's go through some of the steps. So there's the family discussion about expectations. You touched on it, but I admit myself, and I think many of us feel this way, you're a little intimidated by it. They're the parent, and now I'm going to have this sit-down conversation about their care after they've cared for me for most of my life.
It's really hard, and I hear from both sides, though, which is what I find interesting, is that a senior will say to me, oh, I don't want to burden my kids, therefore I'm not telling them. Then I talk to the children, and the children say, I'm not sure how to bring it up. So it's kind of like the elephant in the room, that no one is opening the discussion. I think that what you can do is use some sort of an outside story, like a segment on breakfast television
Right.
or an article in the newspaper, and say, hey, I came across this. What do you think? And that sort of opens the door just a peek to begin those discussions.
Definitely, that we have so much more we could cover, but unfortunately run out of time. But we'll say, legal documents is another big issue to sit down and talk to your parents about, meeting with that financial advisor as well that you mentioned. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
It's my pleasure. Anytime.
Don't go anywhere. Coming up after the break, of course, we'll have more of your headline news and, of course, your update on weather and traffic. You're watching Breakfast Television.